Hello and welcome back, young people. My name is Bruce, and I'm very excited to bring you all lesson number 12. And our lesson today is entitled Obedience Among Neighbors. And it comes from Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 through 18, and also 33 through 37. The time of writing is 1445 BC. The place is Mount Sinai. And I truly love this lesson because it talks about how we are to deal with each other, sprinkled in with some other things that we've gone over throughout the course of our fall quarter. So this lesson is somewhat like a refresher, if you will, with some new things added in, and we'll go through them in our lesson. Again, I am truly excited to bring to you all. One, because we are going into the giving season, if you will. With Thanksgiving coming up on us next week, I pray that each and every one of you all that are making your way to friends and family, that you have traveling mercies. But we also, when we think about this time, when we think about Thanksgiving, we think about what we're thankful for. We think about how God has carried us. For those of us who are born again, we think about how God has kept us through this point. And then you also see people in a more charitable mood, right? People are more apt to give money to the homeless. They're more apt to donate to different causes. And in our lesson, we're going to see how He commanded the children of Israel, how they were to treat those who were less than, those who were without, and then also how to treat the foreigner, which we've kind of touched on throughout this fall quarter that we've been in, but we're going to see it expressed more in this lesson. And again, we're going to talk about, how you govern yourself, when someone does something to you. We're going to talk about how you have to check your heart, because that's where a lot of this stuff starts. And if you don't get rid of it, if you don't deal with it, it can manifest itself into something that you may not want it to. We're going to talk about how, again, allowing God to be your to bring vengeance on those who have wronged you instead of you yourselves doing it. And then also we want to talk about, in this lesson, we're going to talk about, gossiping, tale bearing, and how, again, a lot of people like to hear gossip, but it really, it tears down, or it breaks, it comes between friends and family, and really, just puts the person who is the one spreading it, puts them in a bad light. No matter how you try to spin it, how you try to make someone look, when you are carrying that tea, you're the one ultimately who can find yourself hurt behind it. And so as we get into it again, as we look at our golden text, thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. And that comes from Leviticus 19 and 18. And we'll get into that verse more when we get into that, because I have some feelings on that, especially as we're thinking about our young people and how the enemy has really honed in and is really attacking them. And the purpose of our lesson today, young people, is to show compassion to people by treating them as God instructs us. Again, the children of Israel were told how to treat those that were less fortunate and how to treat those who were foreigners. What do those who know you as a Christian expect to hear and see in you? And that's a question that, we can all ask ourselves as we're, listening or watching this video, or as we're going through the rest of our week. Again, what do those who know you as a Christian expect to hear and see in you? And again, if you are not walking your talk, well, it's going to be evident. And so again, the Lord instructed his people on how to live a holy life. Leviticus 19, 1 through 2. Their lives were to be bound up in their relationship with the Lord. These instructions on holy living flow from God's holy character. All the specific obligations revealed in his word were to be observed to honor him. Again, when you're thinking about how he brought you out, how he delivered you, well, it should not be a stretch. It should not be a burden to obey the things that he's asking of us. Again, this was the children of Israel, but the principles in our lesson still apply today. In this week's lesson, we have a series of general commands that deal with the compassionate treatment Israelites were to show to their neighbors. Again, you can't just treat people any kind of way because they're not like you. When God's people obey his commands, they experience the fullness of life that he intends for them. Again, you don't have to jump through hoops here. God is not asking us to do a whole bunch of extra stuff. He's only simply asking us to submit and obey and follow him. And so as we look at providing for the needy, which covers verses 9 through 10, and let's get into the verses. And again, we're very excited to bring this lesson to you all. And again, hopefully I can make the practical points plain and that you all can apply these into your lives as you go forward. And when chapter 19, verse 9, and when ye reap the harvest of your land, and when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest. And so right off, God is instructing Moses to tell the people, listen, when you guys are collecting your harvest, there's a portion of your field that I want you to leave alone, right? And when you think about, farming, you want to collect every inch of your field. You want to harvest every crop that has sprung up out of the ground. But God is saying to the farmers, hey, listen, I want you all to leave the corner of the field for those who are poor and those who are foreigners or aliens in your land. Neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of the. So if anything that fell, right, if anything was left behind, don't go back and get it. Again, this is what I'm leaving for the poor, and we'll get into and honestly, this is for the adult class, but when you think about it, when you are in a bad situation and when things are not, you know what? Let's go to verse 10 real fast. And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord your God. And so again, we're in the verse 10, we're talking about, grain and all of that. And in verse 10, we're talking about the fruit of the vine. We're talking about, grapes. And again, don't take every grape. And the grapes that fall to the ground, leave. Because again, you're trusting me to bless what you collect to take you through wherever you're trying to go with it. But the little bit that is left behind, that is for those people who cannot or who do not have the means or access to take care of themselves. And the point that I wanted to make for verses 9 and 10 is in the fact that, again, when you are in a bad situation and you can't provide for yourselves, it can be embarrassing. It can make a person, especially a man, it can make a man feel less than a man, for lack of a better word. But in this particular, the way God had it set up for them, well, they were allowed to keep their dignity. They were allowed to, go into this part of the field. They knew that it was going to be there because the law commanded for it to be there. They can go and they can gather and they can take care of themselves or their families with it without having to go and again ask for a handout. Again, I don't know, a lot of you all that may be watching this video, maybe you've never gone through that, but I can recall times in my life where you just don't have it. Or even when I was a younger man or child, my parents did the best that they could, but there were just times where we just didn't have it. And so when you have to go and ask, versus being able to, gather on your own, as the children of Israel were instructed to do for the poor and for the alien, it makes the situation, it puts a little more, or makes you feel a little bit better about your situation. As we look at providing for the needy, harvest time was a time to show mercy to the poor and to the foreigner living in the land. The gleanings in the corners of the field and the fallen grapes of the vineyard were to be left for the poor to harvest for their own consumption. Leviticus 23, 22, and Deuteronomy 24, 19 through 22. This was a time when Israelites could show mercy to their neighbors. Again, we could take all of it, but, we're going to look out and we're trusting God that he's going to bless what we collected. Mercy to their neighbors and the foreigners who lived among them. Farmers were responsible for obeying this harvest directive from the Lord. They were to trust God to provide an ample harvest, which in turn would be a source of supply for those in need. As we look at ethical conduct, which covers verse 11, ye shall not steal, neither deal falsely, neither lie one to another. Now, again, as I've said in the beginning, just because we're not under the law doesn't mean that these principles of God, they're not still in play, if you will. Again, when you're dealing with your brother, your sister, or your neighbor, or your whoever, it behooves you, and it behooves all of us, whether again, hope prayerfully, those of you who are not Christians are considering answering the call, but whether or not you are of the belief or a believer or not, you should deal with people honestly, right? In all aspects of your life. You shouldn't try to get over on people by stealing from them or lying about the genuineness of something that you're selling, or you're not giving all of the information about something that someone is attempting to buy because you're trying to either make the most money or you want to get rid of it, but you don't want to disclose potential problems or setbacks that may befall the person who's trying to buy it. Again, and especially as Christians, right? If you are a child of God, you especially shouldn't be doing these things that are laid out in verse 11. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't deal falsely. Again, honesty is always the best policy. And I know it's cliche, and I know you've probably all heard this before, young people, but it truly is the best way to go. Again, you can say everything in love, but you can still be honest with people that you're dealing with. And I can almost guarantee you that people will respect honesty more than, you got over on them. Well, if you get over on someone, one, they're not going to be happy about it. And two, you may have to deal with it. So again, and unfortunately, some people have lost their lives behind, lying or stealing from people. So again, as you're dealing with one another, as you're dealing with your neighbors, as you're dealing with your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, again, don't steal, don't lie, don't deal falsely with them. Again, God doesn't like that. And so ethical conduct, as we've already mentioned, which covers 11, the Lord gave Israel a series of prohibitions directed at preventing unethical behavior in the community. Because man has a sin nature, it is necessary that certain actions be identified and forbidden by the Lord. Again, stealing, again, you don't want to, and it could be something simple, right? Unfortunately, young people, some people steal their neighbor's water, or they steal their neighbor's electricity, or they, go into their yard. And again, whatever it may be, it shouldn't be a descriptor of those of us who have accepted the call. Again, that may be how the world operates, but for us, stealing, deception, lying, and swearing falsely all witness to a selfish state of mind. All you care about is yourself, and you don't care about who may get hurt in the process. And again, that person that gets hurt in the process may be you, because again, depending on how the person takes, how you lied to them or stole from them, or whatever you did to vex them, again, you'll have to deal with the consequences that come from that. Stealing is a direct violation of the 8th commandment of the Mosaic Law, Exodus 20 and 15. It violates the property rights of someone. Again, you're taking something that belongs to someone else, and it does not belong to you. Dishonest dealings and lying violate the ethical standards of honesty and truth which God expects of his people. Again, I want to keep beating the horse, but if you are a Christian, if you are a child of God, honesty should be your calling card. You know, people shouldn't say, yeah, you know, so-and-so, yeah, you can't really trust anything that come out of their mouth. You know, every other word is a lie. And again, if you have that reputation, well, you're not going to be able to spread the gospel because people are not going to listen to you. Because again, your character is not of God. You're not modeling the example that Christ has laid out for us. These actions arise out of a desire to serve oneself. That is devoid of any concern for others, as I just mentioned. They breed suspicion, distrust, and hatred, which result in seriously weakening the moral fabric of society. Again, if you can't trust, you know, again, we'll use the government for an example. But, you know, again, if you can't trust, you know, the people who are supposed to make the laws, the people who are supposed to, the law enforcement, in short, any type of authoritative figure, authority in that, if you can't trust them, because again, they lie, they spread hatred, well, it's going to really affect the rest of society. As we look at reverence for God's name, which covers Leviticus chapter of verse 12, and verse 12 says, "And ye shall not swear by my name falsely, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord." And so, young people, God is saying again, and you've heard him say before, you shall not swear. Listen, I'll put it to you like this, young people. If you got to say, I swear to God to somebody for them to believe you, leave it alone. You should never have to say to someone that you swear to something. Your word, again, if you are honest and you deal fairly with people, your word should be good enough. You know, you shouldn't have to swear. And again, if you're going to use God's name as, you know, and another way that you take his name in vain is if you say something and then you use God as a almost as a rubber stamp for the person that you're speaking with to say, oh, okay, well, all right, well, you know, God told you to do this, or God led you to listen. You have to be real careful with that, right? People who always come to you and say, well, God said this or God led me to do. Listen, and I'm not saying that they're not being honest with you, but whatever they're saying needs to line up with God's character. Point blank, period. You know, if whatever they're saying to you doesn't line up with his character, they are taking his name in vain, and they're using God as a vehicle to get you to do whatever it is they want you to do. So again, be very careful with people who always run up to you and say, oh, God led me to listen. And I want to stress, you don't want to be the person that just dismisses everything. But again, whatever someone says that came to them from the Lord for you, it should line up with God's character. And again, you know, you don't want to profane the name of God, right? You don't want to swear by his name falsely. You don't want to use his name to entice someone to do something that you want them to do, knowing full well that it's not what it seems. It's not what you said it is. Again, you are lying and you're being deceitful to someone. And again, you're violating. Well, we're not under the law, but again, God may judge you for that. I'll put it to you like that, as simple as that can be. To swear falsely by the name of the Lord or to invoke his name in support of a fraudulent promise or agreement was forbidden. Such acts were intended to lend the likeness of truth to some deceitful, immoral, or unlawful action or unlawful action. God is called on to validate an act because of who he is. God's sacred name is profane in such acts, in such instances. So again, you want to run far away from that. You never want to say, again, as I described, well, God said, and oh, listen, God is, listen. Again, the spirit in you, for those of you that are born again, your spirit should be in agreement with whatever someone, especially a fellow brother or sister in Christ, is saying to you. To profane the Lord's name in any manner is a violation of the third commandment of the Mosaic law, Exodus 20:7. This prohibition protects God's reputation. Again, if you say, oh, God did this and God told me to do that, or this is good, oh, I swear to God, and then it turns out that you were full of it. Well, not only are you made to look bad, but now you've dragged God into your mess. And now someone is like, yeah, man, just throw God out here. Why would I want to be involved in these people? Why would I want to be with the people of the well? Why would I want to be with these Christians when, all they do is lie and they're not truthful and deceitful? Again, that will definitely keep you or harm or put a roadblock in front of your effort in spreading the gospel. As we look at respecting the worker, which covers verse 13, verse 13 says, thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him the wages of him that is hired. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning. And in this verse, young people, it is pretty plain. And I know we're reading out of the King James, but listen, if someone does a job for you, right, and you have their money for them right then and there, pay them. And that's essentially what God is saying to the children of Israel. Don't sit there and say, oh, I got your money, but I'll give it to you in the morning. Because again, you may be in a situation where you have, but the person that you hired to do the work, well, that person may be poor and they may be depending on that wage for the day to take care of their family. And so for Israelite to say, oh man, come back tomorrow, I'll pay you tomorrow. God is like, no, you are, again, you're defrauding them because again, they may be in a situation and it's no different than if you fast forward to today, right? People, when they work, they want their money, right? If someone comes and does a service in your home for your parents or for yourself, as you all are growing up, and for everyone else watching this video, when someone comes and cuts your grass, or someone comes and fix your electrical, or someone comes and fix your plumbing, they want to get paid. You can't sit there and say, in most cases, oh man, listen, yeah, I got the money, but come back and check with me tomorrow. That's not one. A lot of times you got to pay up front because people have been burnt, and two, that's not going to fly. Again, you have the means to take care of that person. You go ahead on and you take care of that person then. And again, as I said, as we parallel today, don't make these people wait for what is rightfully theirs, right? You hired them to do a job. They did the job. Go ahead on and give them what they are due. Again, a person respecting the worker, again, which covers verse 13, a person was never to be defrauded or robbed of his just dues. To take advantage of a neighbor was an act of injustice. Hired servants were to be paid daily. And say it again, hired servants were to be paid daily. To hold back their wages even just until the next day could place a hardship on them, especially the poor. Workers live day to day on what they earn. And unfortunately, not much has changed, right? There are a lot of people, and I, again, can raise my hand because I was a day laborer. I worked at a temp agency that we got paid daily, right? It was a little bit of nothing, but you did your time. You went to the assignment. You came back. They cut you a check. You didn't have to jump through hoops. Again, the only way you couldn't get your check is if you got back after they were closed. But then again, first thing in the morning, you go and they got your check for you. So again, as I said, and I sound like a broken record, but those that have means and those who have hired people, well, do the right thing, right? Don't sit there and say, oh, I got you tomorrow, bro. Or, when in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I'm going out tonight. And, I just want to make sure that I have, whatever. Again, you don't know what a person's situation is when you do stuff like that. And so as we look at protecting the disabled, and then this part of the lesson is, and I pray, and listen, because we were all young and children can be especially cruel, if you will. And quite frankly, so can adults and young people aren't very far behind them, especially when you're talking about dealing with the disabled. And God has called all of us, to look after them because again, all of us were created. All of us were created in his image and created and formed in our mother's wombs. Just because these people have disabilities doesn't give us free reign to treat them any kind of way. And so as we look at verse 14, thou shalt not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but shalt fear thy God. I am the Lord. And again, and let me go back if I can. You've seen at the end of verse 10, at the end of verse 12, and also here at the end of verse 14, and you're going to see it again. But God is ending these verses with, I am the Lord your God. Again, I'm saying this. This is not Moses is talking. This is me telling you all, hey, you all need to save some for the poor. You all need to not lie to each other. You all need to, again, not mistreat those who are disabled, those who have issues going on in their bodies. Again, when we think about, again, as I said, people in general can be cruel. To sit there and curse or mock or pick on someone who is deaf, again, we all should be thanking, if you're listening to this video, you should be thanking God for your hearing, right? If you can see my face through your whatever device you're using to watch this video, you should be thanking God. Because again, we could have been one of those ones who can't see or can't hear. So again, to make fun of and to curse or put stumbling blocks, to watch them fall. Like, you know what? Again, we as humans can be cruel. But I would pray that, as you all have walked this Christian walk and for you young people that are coming into the faith, you're moving away from those type of hijinks, if you will. Again, put yourself, and I'm always, wanting to say, put yourself in their shoes. Close your eyes and go somewhere that you're unfamiliar. I put it to you like that, because a lot of us are familiar with our surroundings in our homes, apartments, or wherever. But go somewhere and put blinders on and try to move about. Find get in a soundproof room and cover your ears to where you can't hear anything, and see how you feel, right? How helpless that can be. Now, don't get it twisted. There are a lot of blind and deaf people that are living active lives. These people are not, they're not invalids, but again, they are living with whatever disability they have. But again, God is saying to the children of Israel and even to the church today, man, I am their protector. Listen, you've heard me say it's an awful thing to be in the hands of a living God. Mess around and put yourself in a position where you are coming up against one of those ones who can't protect themselves, like a child, like someone who is disabled, like the poor, or the elderly. And again, take your chances with God if you want to. The Lord is the protector of the disabled. He takes the side of the disadvantaged. It was sport. It was a sport for some people to curse the deaf, for they could not hear the curse. But I tell you what, young people, God could hear it. God also condemned a callous attitude toward the blind. Some made sport of a blind man by deliberately placing an object in his path, causing him to fall. Again, it's lined up in the lesson. God does not like that. You may get a quick laugh, and maybe you may get a laugh from the people standing around you. But again, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, nor would I want to be you if God decided to say, well, let me take that sight away from you. Because it's not like people who've had their sight for most of their lives haven't unfortunately lost their sight. So again, make fun of the deaf, make fun of the blind if you want to. Take a chance. The deaf and the blind are helpless against such low deeds of disrespect. For their personhood, the disabled were to be treated with respect, for they bear the image of their creator God. Genesis 1:26 and 27. Lack of concern for their impediments displayed a hardness of heart. God sees such ridicule, and those who violate his commandments should fear his vengeance. Deuteronomy 27 and verse 18. As we look at justice for all, which covers verses 15 and 16, and as we look at verse 15, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Again, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. But in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. So again, we just did obedience and justice where you all, for those of you all who've been following or who saw or heard that lesson, well, you heard me say God said explicitly, it doesn't matter if they're poor. It doesn't matter if they're rich. The only thing that matters is is judging fairly and judging righteously, not judging based on what someone looks like or what someone have or has not. Right. Again, when you have judges who are, biased or they show partiality to one side or the other, well, then the whole thing falls apart. Because again, if I can't trust you to judge the case fairly, then, again, what are we doing here? And so, again, as we look at verse 16, thou shalt not go up and down. This was my favorite verse of the lesson, young people. Verse 16, thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord. Listen, this is for you gossipers, right? This is for the people that love to carry the tea, right? God is saying to the children of Israel, listen, thou shalt not go back and forth telling everybody business. You should, and on top of that, you should not, when you know that something is wrong, or you have an opportunity to say, yeah, no, that's not right, and then you decide, no, I'm going to keep quiet in that situation, and then unfortunately something bad happens to that person because of your lack of concern, or I don't like them, so I'm just going to let fate do what fate does. No, God is telling you, I don't like that. God doesn't like the gospel, nor does God like the person who sits around and does nothing when in fact they can step in and help out. And again, I am the Lord. Again, this is not Moses talking. This is me talking. This is me telling you, hey, listen, keep people's business. As I thought about that verse, a lot of times people are given information and it's for you. It's not for everyone else. And irregardless of whether or not they offend you because you all get mad at each other, you have a falling out, you still are not supposed to betray the confidant that gave you that told you whatever they told you. Right. A lot of times people get mad at their friends or family and they run off and tell all of the secrets. It's like, well, wait a minute. Again, we may be disagreeing right now, but that doesn't mean go and spill everything that I've ever said to you. But unfortunately, it happens. Now, again, as Christians, I would pray that that's not you. We shouldn't be the one. And unfortunately, I know it is. I'm not naive to sit here and say that, Christians are not, gossiping, or they're not carrying tea, or they're not talking about, in different individuals. I pray for those of you that are watching or listening to this video, that's not you. And again, if you've engaged in that, hey, repent and make and reconcile with whichever party has been offended by you. Again, running off at the mouth and telling everyone's business. Reconcile with that person if you can, or those people if you can, but move away from that. Hey, man, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? Hey, man, did y'all see what happened? Listen, at the end of the day, as Christians, that shouldn't describe us. And again, as we look at justice for all, which again covers 15 and 16, justice is not justice, going back to 15, unless the scales of justice swing evenly for all people. Again, you don't want to judge anyone unfairly. Standards for public administration of justice All cases in the social structure of Israel were to be treated equally. Neither sympathy for the poor nor fear of the wealthy and powerful were to influence the judicial process. Israel's laws were not mere human inventions, as I've been saying throughout, but the written codes of God's will. The law was to be adjudicated with total impartiality. A talebearer is one who engages in gossip, as we've said before. This is a violation of the ninth commandment of the law, Exodus 20:16. Slandering a neighbor was placed on the same level as imperiling a neighbor's life. And an Israelite was not to testify against an innocent neighbor falsely, accusing him so that he would be wrongly punished. Again, those of you who watched last week's lesson, you remember not last week, but the week before. But you remember, that was last week. But you remember the story of Naboth and King Ahab in the vineyard. Again, Jezebel had Naboth surrounded by two liars. They lied on him, and he was stoned to death, right? This is what I mean about, again, you know something to be false, and you either don't speak up, or you dive in head first and say, so and so they definitely did that, knowing good and well that they didn't, because maybe you want whatever it is they got, or you're trying to get whatever it is, whatever the motivation may be. Again, God doesn't like that. And again, that's unbecoming of a Christian. Again, if Christ is our model, then we're not doing those things. We're not carrying the tea. We're not slandering our neighbors. We're not looking to get them in trouble so that they can be punished because we don't like them, or because we want to take over something that they may have. This meant seeking to contact a neighbor by either supporting false allegations against him or failing to come to his defense against false allegation. The outcome in the legal case could very well be the death penalty for the neighbor. And unfortunately for Naboth, it was, in fact, a death penalty. As we look at love your neighbor, which covers 17 and 18, thou shalt not hate thine brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. Listen, in this verse, as I said in the introduction, and I talked about your heart, a lot of resentment, a lot of hate, a lot of anger, a lot of that envy, it starts here. You have to deal with whatever in your heart. You have to, through prayer and scripture reading and through the brothers and sisters of the faith, you got to rid yourself of that. Because again, if you're constantly, and this was the verse, young people, well, not this verse, but when someone does something to you and you don't speak on it, right? And this is what it's meant at the end, where it says, thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor. If someone does something to you, it's okay for you to go to them and say, hey man, you wronged me, or I didn't like that, and you let them know, and you put it on the table, right? Now, whether they you repent, apologize or not, you've done your part, right? You said what you needed to say, so you are free and clear, right? Versus if you just sit there and you can't stand so and so, I can't stand. You just build that hatred you're building it up, and who knows what will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Unfortunately, we've seen neighbors, friends, family members who've not dealt with unresolved issues result to violence, right? And in some cases, some people have lost their lives. Because again, they didn't deal with the fact that you hurt me, you did something to me, and I didn't like it, right? But I didn't bring it to your attention. I didn't rebuke you for it. I just kind of just dealt with it on my own. Which, again, trust me, as someone who's lived a large portion of their life holding things in and not saying things and just suffering in silence, and that's essentially what you're doing. You're suffering in silence because you're not saying to someone, hey man, I didn't like that. And again, you can say everything in love, right? You don't have to browbeat them. You don't have to speak harshly to them, because again, that may not go well for you, or it may not go well in the situation, but you can say, hey, I didn't like that, and you hurt me. And this is what you did. And I'm just laying it out on the table. You take from it what you will, but I'm going to clear my heart and conscience so that I can move on. Because again, if you don't, well, that's a sin on you as well. As we look at verse 18, thou shalt not, and this is for this, and this verse, well, let's get into the verse. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. Listen, a lot of our young people and young people, you all know, because you all are out there, you're living it. They've been caught up in gang life, right? Unfortunately, we've lost so many, countless young people, innocent people in some cases, to gun violence, to gang violence. And a lot of times when someone dies on one side, well, the other side immediately has to go back and get revenge. It sucks because a lot of times what you have is the wrong person ends up getting hurt. Someone innocent ends up getting hurt. You have a young man or a young lady, whatever, throwing their life away. You have another young man or young lady who could seriously be hurt or if not killed because you all couldn't just say, all right, well, they got us and I'm going to let God deal with it. Because again, at the end of the day, and I'm using gang violence, I'm using violence in general as a way to bring this verse out. But this is for anything. If someone slaps your cheek, it's not for you to go and punch them in their face. If someone scratches your car, it's not for you to go and do something to them. Again, you don't have to avenge every wrong. You don't have to avenge any wrongs, right? Because again, I can promise you, you're not going to do more to an individual than God can, right? So if vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, someone does something to you, let God handle it. Again, you hate to see the young people fall victim to this petty, these ops, the ops, all this. This is all you hear in music, and this is what you hear with the young people. It's again, as I said, it sucks because again, we're being robbed of our young people. You young people are the future. But if a good chunk of you all have passed on due to violence, or if a good chunk of you all are locked behind walls because you committed said violence, well, again, you're just playing into the enemy's hands. And to be sure, that's his goal, right? He's going after our children. And as Christians, it's our job to snatch these young men and these young ladies and say, hey, there's a better way. You don't have to follow this gang. You don't have to go and fight this individual because the gang says so. You don't have to go and shoot at those people because the gang says so. Again, we're sorry that you lost your friend or family member, but you pray and let God deal with it at the end of the day. As we look at as we look at love your neighbor, which covers 17 and 18, hatred was not to be harbored in the heart against a neighbor. A neighbor who was at fault in a matter was to be rebuked openly. Basically, that means, hey, you go to them and say, listen, I didn't like this. You did this to me. This is what you did, and I didn't like it. And again, as I said, if you come to them in love, you may be able to hash it out. You may be able to come to an understanding where okay, all right, so-and-so has come to me. They've said that they don't like this, and now, I'm on notice, right? Christ later commanded this approach, Matthew 18:15 through 17. The purpose of the open rebuke was to encourage the neighbor to repent and pursue what was right rather than suffer the consequences of wrongdoing. An Israelite was neither to take vengeance on nor harbor a grudge against his neighbor. Again, you did something to me. I told you about it. I'm releasing it to God and I'm moving on. Vengeance is the exclusive prerogative of the Lord, Deuteronomy 32:35. He will repay evil in his own time. And I feel like that's something that as humans, it's difficult, right? Someone did something to you, or someone violently took away your loved one, and you want it done immediately. You want swift justice. Like, again, I don't want to wait for the judicial process to go through. I want this person dealt with right now. Listen, at the end of the day, God's timing is always perfect, right? It may not be your timing, but the timing was always perfect. He will repay evil in his own time. The offended person incurs guilt when he deals with the conflict by taking vengeance or holding a grudge. Again, if you go and do something because you want to take it into your own hands, well, again, one, you're playing right into the enemy's hands, and you could potentially find yourself in a situation where, as I remember my aunt's voice, and she's gone now, but she would always say, trouble is easy to get into, but it is very hard to get out of. So for you all hearing my voice, if you've never heard that, you can take that. Again, it's easy to get into trouble, but it's extremely hard to get out of it. And so unresolved conflict leads to an even greater grudge and division among people. Again, when you don't say how you feel in a loving way, it just builds up walls, right? And you could come to a point where you literally can't stand a person, right? You literally can't, nothing. I mean, the way they walk, the way they talk, because again, you're harboring all of that hatred and anger, all of that grudginess in your heart. You got to deal with it. It's poison. It will poison you if you let it go on and run around unchecked. The Mosaic law did not concern itself with only outward obedience. It dealt with the inner heart of man as well. Again, everything starts here, right? If your heart is not right, generally, everything else is probably not going to be right as well. As we look at treatment of foreigners, which covers verses 33 and 34, 33, and if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him. So again, in this verse, God is saying, listen, if a foreigner or alien or however you want, a stranger, however you want to say it, if they are coming through, or visiting or whatever it is, don't mistreat them. Again, remember, well, that's in 34. But again, you ought to remember where you came from, and again, if you all are to be an example, or if you all are to be a representative of me on earth, then you all need to treat the rest of the people that I created. You all need to treat them with kindness. You ought to show love to them, because again, this is your opportunity this is your opportunity to show that, okay, this is the one true and living God. Not these idols that are running around, Baal, Ashtaroth, Molech, or any of these other idols that these other people happen to be worshiping. No, the true and living God is the God of Israel. And hey, by the way, can you tell me more about him? Excuse me. And so, verse 34, but the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And I'm truly happy that this verse actually came back around, because there was a point when we first talked about this, as we look at you shall be unto, but the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. For me, as I relate it to today, as we think about today, we were all ex something, right? You can see the sinners saved by grace. I was a sinner and still sin and have to ask God for forgiveness daily. But when we were in the world, right, and we did whatever it is we did, and then we heard the call, and thank God you did, and you answered, and then you accepted him into your life. Well, that doesn't mean that you look back at those that are still in the world with disdain, that you turn your nose up to them, because again, you were once in the world as well. You were once a slave to sin. You were once a child of Satan. Again, you understand what they're going through, and prayerfully you are doing everything in your power to help bring them out of that situation. But again, you don't want to look down on them. You don't want to, withhold guidance or prayers because of their particular lifestyle or because of the fact that they're of the world. Because again, as I've said, you were of the world. And again, God is telling the Israelites, you all were strangers too one time. So remember how it felt to be strangers, how it felt to not have any rights or not have, any way of, fitting in or feeling a part of the community, if you will. So if you remember that, then you're not going to treat the person who is not like you, who's not a natural born Israelite, you're not going to treat them any kind of way. Again, paralleling to today's church, you're not going to treat someone who is in the world any kind of way because they are of the world. Again, you're going to do your best to pray for them, to read scripture to them if they ask, to tell them about the Lord, whatever it is that they may ask of you. You do it. You don't say, oh, well, you got a record and I don't, or you used to be this, or I don't like you because you did something to me in my past, and so I'm just gonna completely no. Again, remember, someone came to us, someone prayed for us, someone interceded on our behalf. God is interceding on our behalf right now, right? For those of us that are believers. But again, you don't ever want to get in a position where you hold yourself like you're above the fray, like your mess doesn't stink, like you weren't back there in the world doing some of the same things that the person that you're like, yeah, no, I don't want them person. No, I'm holy, right? I'm holy now, right? I'm Christian now. I don't have time. No, listen, Jesus didn't come for the healthy; He came for the sick. And so, as we look at the treatment of foreigners, which again covers 33 and 34. Foreign residents in the community were not to be harassed or exploited in any fashion. They resided among the Israelites and had adopted their way of life. These ethnic minorities were to be treated in the same humane and respectful fashion as man would treat his fellow Israelite neighbor. An Israelite was to love both the alien and his fellow Israelite as he loved himself. Again, it's no different for us today. You are to love those around you, those that are in the world, and your fellow brothers and sisters in the church as much as you love yourself. And again, I know a lot of you all, some of you all love yourselves a whole lot. And so you should share that same love with those that are either not of the faith or not of the, not believers. And with, again, those that may be in the faith that, maybe you don't have the best relationship with, right? Maybe, whatever may have you. But again, God has called us to love each other, to be compassionate to one another. As we look at just business practices, which covers 35 through 37, and 35, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment in meat yard, in weight, or in measure. And so a meat yard is basically a measuring stick, right? And so when we're dealing in an agricultural society, when we bring things to measure, when we bring things, listen, God is telling the business owners, you guys need to be fair, right? You guys don't need to be shortchanging people. You guys don't need to be, using dishonest weights and measures so that you gain an advantage over those who are coming to you. Again, God is not going to bless that. Again, as we've paralleled today, again, you want to be fair in all of your business dealings, right? Or if you're not a business owner, let's say you work a regular 9 to 5. Well, again, you want to be fair and everything that you do, even on these people's job, right? You don't want to, again, there's more than one way to steal other than just taking something from somebody physically. As we look at verse 37 or 36, just balances, just weights, a just ephah, a just hand shall ye have. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Again, God is reminding them who their source is. He's reminding them, hey, who's been taking care of you all this time? Oh, yeah, that's right. It was me. So when I say to you all, make sure your balances are right. Make sure your weights, make sure your ephah is correct. Make sure, and for those of you that don't know what a hand is like for liquids, right? It measures out to about a gallon, give or take. But again, everything that you do, especially anything that you do unto the Lord, well, it needs to be honest. So again, as Christians, in everything that we do, whether in our business life, our personal life, on our jobs, wherever, we are to be honest in how we deal and treat people, especially, those who are consumers. Because again, if you get a reputation as someone who cheats people, good luck staying in business. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you get the reputation as someone who is dishonest, you may want to find a new occupation, because you're not going to find very many people who are going to be willing to spend their hard-earned money on you or with you when it is a known fact, or it is known that, yeah, you're not always on the up and up. As we look at verse 37, therefore ye shall observe, therefore ye observe all my statutes and all my judgments and do them. I am the Lord. Again, reminding them that I was the one that brought you out of slavery, right? I was the one that provided manna. I was the one that's been covering you by day and providing light by night. Again, all of these things equals out. You guys are going to observe and obey the things that I've said, right? And all of my judgments, and you're going to do them. Now, unfortunately for, the children of Israel, they had their issues. Let's just call a spade, but it's no different from us. We have the scriptures, we have the gospels, we have everything laid out in front of us, and yet, sometimes we don't deal honestly. We're not fair. Sometimes we don't treat people with kindness. Sometimes, we thumb our nose, or we just don't want to be bothered with someone who is of the world. Again, we have to bring that kind of stuff into check, because again, we serve a holy God. We were called out of the mess that we were in. We were saved. We were given the Holy Spirit. He's been walking with us. He's been carrying us. Again, the minimalist thing that you can do is to observe the things that he's asking of you, to be an example, to model him and all of his characteristics in all of your dealings. And as we look at just business practices, which again covers 35 through 37, human beings will not naturally do right. They need to know what is right and what God expects. The heart is deceitfully wicked. Again, the heart is deceitfully wicked. Jeremiah 17, verse 9. There are more ways to steal than outright theft, which I mentioned earlier. The Lord expected absolute honesty to prevail in all business transactions. Again, because you represent me. You represent me. If you guys, are unfair or get that reputation as liars, and then you all are flying under you're flying under my banner, then now people are going to curse me. Now people are going to say, yeah, man, I don't know about this God that these Israelites serve, or I don't know about this Jesus that these Christians keep talking about, because every time I turn around, they're doing some of the same things that we doing. You know what I mean? So again, we have to be absolutely honest. We have to be absolutely sure in our character, especially as we're dealing with our neighbors, because again, they will not hesitate to throw it back in your face. Well, I thought you were Christian. Man, I thought you were Christian. Man, again, you all heard it before. As we look at real life applications, as we're closing out, we have an obligation to give aid to our neighbors when the need arises. This reminds us that all that we have belongs to the Lord and not to us. Again, God cares for the disadvantaged in our community. He uses us as a source of his provision for them. Again, I can't tell you how many times God has sent somebody and said, hey, listen, here's a plate of food, or Hey, you all right? Here's a couple of dollars. Someone is probably coming to your life. God has probably used someone to come into your life. Hey, everything's okay. Here, let me help you out. And again, this is God's way of blessing you, of keeping you. You know what I mean? Through someone else, but they were led by God to do this thing for you, this charitable thing for you. And so young people should actively involve themselves in helping those in the community who have come upon difficult times. This means putting their love for others into actions. Again, if you love others, hey, listen, you'll go out and volunteer. You'll take food to the elderly. You'll volunteer in the soup kitchen. Excuse me. As I said earlier, Thanksgiving is coming up. A lot of you all, as families, this is tradition where you go down and you feed the homeless. And again, God bless you, because again, that's a truly wonderful thing. And you'd love to see a day where everyone is taking time to do those types of things. But again, for those of you who do set time aside to go and take care of those or look after those who are less fortunate, again, may God bless you, and may God open up the windows of heaven to rain down a blessing upon you. Because again, as I said, you are a shining example. You are exactly what God was expecting. Someone that people can look and say, yeah, that's a man or woman of God. And I know that there are a lot of non-believers who also, participate in these charitable things. But again, they're the heart of the Christian, right? You're there because you genuinely, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. You're there because you have a genuine love for people. Again, I can't speak to the motivation behind, some other people, but as Christians, your motivation should be, hey, listen, these are all God's children too. They may not be believers, but they were all still God. They are all God's children. So, I just want to do my part. And again, you never know how much that can be a blessing to someone. God's name represents all that he is. God's name represents all that he is. We honor his name by our words and our deeds. We should be honest and fair in all our interactions with others, for that honors God. That honors God. That honors God. Listening to slander encourages the defamer to continue to speak disparagingly about other people. Again, when someone brings the tea to you, hey, listen, it's okay to shut that down. Hey, man, listen, I don't, man, that's on them. Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, that ain't got nothing to do with me, my brother. Hey, do you have anything else for me? You got a word for me? Because I don't want to talk about something else that someone else got going on. But listening to the slander encourages the defamer to continue to speak disparagingly about other people. If someone offends us, it is important that we confront the offender in order to resolve the matter. Again, you don't want any unresolved hate stirring up inside of you. We should pray that God will give us wisdom and grace to act appropriately and reaching reconciliation. Offenses should be dealt with honestly, privately, and graciously. Again, you don't always have to, in a large setting, point out what someone did wrong or how they wronged you or how they, whatever. Because again, you got to read the room. That may cause them to go into a shell, or it may cause them to lash out because, well, what, you trying to embarrass me? So again, before you go into that process of reconciliation, I would invite you all to pray, to ask God to give you the words to speak. And prayerfully, those of you that are Christians, the Holy Spirit will speak for you. Young people also need to consider how they welcome new people into their neighborhoods, school, and church. We must accept people for who they are. Welcoming a new person is the first step in showing him or her God's love through you. Again, a lot of people remember that first impression. And if your first impression was, hey, I'm so-and-so, and what's your name? And hey, you just moved here. Let me tell you about, this, that, and the third, and who knows where the conversation may lead. But again, you are extending an olive branch to someone who may be, you know, and as we talked about in previous lessons, you know, it's difficult when you move into a new community as a young person, or, you know, even as adults. You know, sometimes it can be difficult to make friends on new jobs, or, you know, whatever may have you. But again, you know, those of us that are Christians, you know, we should always take those opportunities to extend olive branches, should the opportunity arise. And before we go into our normal ending of the lesson, I want to read this into you all's hearing, and this comes from Plato, and it says, "Never discourage anyone who continually makes progress, no matter how slow." Again, never discourage anyone who continually makes progress, no matter how slow. And essentially, you know, we all get there at different times, right? Some people get things fast, right? Some people come, they hear the call, and they immediately, you know, they jump both feet in and they're ready to run for the Lord. And some people, it just takes some time, right? It's not for us to browbeat. It's not for us to, you know, send people to hell. It's not for us to judge people unfairly. It's not for, listen, everyone gets there. Everyone gets there in their own timing. Again, as I said earlier, God's timing is perfect. So again, it's not for us to well, man, why haven't you gotten to this point yet? And even babes in Christ, right? For those of you veteran Christians, you know, be careful, you know, with these babes, because again, just because you picked it up fast doesn't mean that they're going to pick it up fast. So again, and showing love and patience and that willingness to help them along, oh, that's big. I mean, it goes so far. And so as we've brought this lesson to a close, I pray that this lesson was a blessing. I pray that you all will take these practical points, apply them. You know, don't be a liar. You know, be honest in everything that you do. Don't hold grudges. Don't be a gossip. You know, don't lie on someone because you want to get something, or don't sit there and keep quiet when you know what the truth is. Again, you know, as Christians, we are called to be different, right? That may describe the world, but that should never describe us as Christians. And so for those of you, again, who are not believers, who've listened to this lesson and said, you know what, you know, God has been tugging at me, and you know, or you know, I've been running this race and I just can't get any fulfillment. You know, what am I doing wrong? Well, have you allowed Christ to enter your heart? You know, have you accepted him as your personal Lord and Savior? Again, you've heard me say before, it doesn't mean that everything is going to stop just because you accept him, but it gets a lot easier. You have, you know, essentially you have almost a cheat code, if you will. You have fellowship with brothers and sisters that can help you. You have an intercessor, right? If you would just simply confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus died, he was buried, he was raised by God on the third day. He's right now in heaven ruling with God, interceding on our behalf. You know, I just got out of class on tonight, on Wednesday night, and our teacher, you know, you know, Satan he's coming to and fro to accuse us. And all Jesus does is, I died for that. Young minister said he just holds his hand up. You see the hole in his hand. I died for that. So you can go on back where you came from, because that sin is covered. So you can accuse all you want. But again, if you've not accepted him, well, you know, again, you don't have that covering, right? You don't have that peace. You know, you don't have that fellowship with the brothers and sisters. And prayerfully, for those of you who accept the call, find a Bible believing church. I'm going to say this until I'm gone. You know, it does you no good. It does you no good in your spiritual growth to go into a ministry that doesn't preach the entire Bible, to go into a ministry that's, you know, not word based. You know, find you a word based church, a Bible believing church, and prayerfully the man or woman of God of that ministry can bless and pour into you and help you as you are going on this journey. But again, I pray for those of you. I pray for each and every one of you all. I pray that you all have a wonderful weekend. Look forward to seeing you all next week, Thanksgiving week. More than likely, there's only going to be one video next week. It's going to be a combination. But again, I look forward to seeing you all right before we go into the Thanksgiving holiday weekend and spending time with our family. Until then, I want to say thank you all. Thank you all. We're almost to the end of our second quarter, right? We started in the summer. We've gone through the fall, and we're about to go into our winter quarter. I thank each and every one of you that subscribe, who share, who follow, who's told other people about our videos and these Sunday school lessons. Thank you all. You all don't know how much you bless me. To those folks that commented on last week's lesson, especially to the young lady, I received that. Thank you so much. Again, you all don't know how much that blesses me. So until the next time, I look forward to seeing each and every one of you all back on the corner. Until then, God bless.